The first week of July was the hottest on record, the World Meteorological Organization has said. What impact will these extreme temperatures have on the global economy? Let us hear from an economist to form an opinion.
The shift in the El Niño-Southern Oscillation cycle from the cooler La Niña phase to the warmer El Niño phase certainly has the capacity to have some major humanitarian and ecological impacts on the world economy. Increases the risks of higher average global temperatures over the coming years, perhaps new record highs, increases the risk of drought, forest fires, and also flooding in a number of economies. And that will, of course, have huge humanitarian and ecological implications. But whether or not it has big enough ramifications to change the broader global economic outlook is another matter. Certainly, it's fair to say that those economies that potentially suffer from these kinds of disasters will certainly see some significant economic impacts, which may well change circumstances substantially, particularly in the regions worst affected within those countries. But which countries those will be is clearly difficult to predict. So El Niño is more of a risk to our economic outlook than something to change it. It's also worth noting that at a global level, the annual cost to natural disasters is actually relatively small. It's just been about 0.2% of GDP over the last 3 years. And the impact on actual economic activity, so annual GDP, is likely to have been even smaller still. So once again, the risk of increased sort of natural disasters in the form of droughts, forest fires, etc., is likely to have, at a global level, relatively small implications that aren't really a game changer for our economic forecasts. The other potential way in which El Niño could influence the global economy is if it has a big impact on food prices, and that could raise food price inflation, creating further headaches for central banks that are trying to return inflation back to target. Once again, this is a potential risk, but it's worth noting that a number of academic studies suggest that whilst crop yields are typically lower for some crops in El Niño phase, it's by no means universal, and typically the global impact on food prices is small in comparison to the typical year-to-year volatility in food prices that we see. So once again, it's a potential increased risk of higher food prices, but once again, it's probably not a reason to be making wholesale upward adjustments to our CPI inflation forecasts. So in conclusion, certainly El Niño is something that could well be very disruptive for some economies, increase the risks of things like floods, droughts, forest fires. But for now, at least, it's not something that is triggering us to make wholesale changes to our global economic forecasts.